Let's move on to the third topic, sociological theories of crime causation. First is social disorganization theory. It's a theory developed by the Chicago School related to ecological theories. It views crime-ridden neighborhoods as those in which residents are trying to live at the earliest opportunity. This theory also directly links crime rates to neighborhood ecological characteristics, a core principle of social disorganization that state locations matter sa isa ka area where a certain crime always happens. In other words, a person's residential location is a substantial factor shaping the likelihood that the person will become involved in illegal activities. So, ma-involve ang isa ka tao sa illegal activities if that certain residents in that certain neighborhoods in that certain area are most likely to commit crimes. So, this theory is developed by Chicago-based sociologists Clifford Shaw and Henry Mackay. Okay, let's move on to the concentric zone theory, also known as the Borges model or the CCD model, one of the earliest theoretical models to explain urban social structures. It was the first to give the explanation of distribution of social group within urban areas. So, it consists of 5 concentric zones: Central Business District, Zone of Transition, Lower Income Working Place, High Income Residences, and Commuter Zones. So, kaning Central Business Districts, diri nakabutang ang mga hotels, businesses, other commercial activities. Mga businesses, all business. Nana siya sa Central Business District. Next is Zone of Transition, also known as Gray Zone. Naadiri ang mga land and properties which are held for speculation purposes. Lower income, working place, where homes or the slums are. Mga say tawag ana nila kanang squatter, slums. High income residences, where white collar or middle class are. Mga dato. Naada na nakabutang ang mga high income residences. And commuter zone. Commuter zone refers to the suburbs where people who work in the center chose to live. Kinsa da kuno tong zone, kinsa tong zone nga pinakaduol sa city are most likely nga taas og crime rates. And then kung kinsa tong pinakalayo nga zone from the city are more likely to had the lower crime rates. So kinsa man ang pinakaduol? So the Central Business District, where hotels, businesses, and other commercial activities are. So ang Central Business District had the higher crime rates. Thus the theory by Ernest Burgess and Robert Park, who are Chicago School sociologists. So let's move on to anomy theory. Anomy theory is one in which rules of behavior norms have broken down or become imperative during periods of rapid social change or social crisis, such as a war or famine. It most likely occurs in societies that are moving forward from mechanical solidarity to organic solidarity. So, unsa maning mechanic solidarity? Mechanic solidarity is defined as a characteristic from pre-industrial society which is held together by traditions, shared values, and unquestioned beliefs. More on mga pre-industrial society pa, wala pa ng mga dili pa civilized ang atuang syudad. So, nag-involve og mga traditions, kung unsay mga shared values, mga beliefs sa mga tao. Whereas, ang organic solidarity refers to the post-industrial system of society in which the place is highly developed and dependent upon the division of labor. And people are connected by their interdependent needs for each other's services, and production. So, which are the place are already developed, which ang mga tao makabalo na sa mga something nga na binuhatan. Nakatrabaho na sila mga labor, and then if dili ma-meet nila ilang mga needs, and then most likely makakommit sila og certain illegal activities. So this certain theory is developed by David Emil Durkheim. So let's move on to strain theory. States that society puts pressure on individuals to achieve socially accepted goals such as the American dream, though they lack the means. In short, this strain theory talks about the goal means blockage. For example, kidnapping. A certain worker, he wants to have this car. He has a dream of having a car. And then, because he lack means upon achieving those car, he will involve to different activities. And so, he may resort to carnapping. Mao na iyahang means. Iyahang paagi para ma-meet niya iyahang goal. Iyang goal, to buy car. Ang iyang means, to buy the car, carnapping. So, this was developed by Robert Merton. Okay, let's move on to the fifth one. Relative deprivation theory. It is formally defined as an actual or perceived lack of resources required to maintain the quality of life, to which various socioeconomic groups or individuals with those groups have grown accustomed or are considered to be the accepted norm with the group. So in this relative deprivation theory, it clearly emphasizes that a sharp division between the rich and the poor creates an atmosphere of envy and mistrust. Example, Dia is wealth and Gia is poor. So si Dia always lami ang sudan, and then si Gia always og bulad. Gaka lagot siya kay usahay kay gipuraan na siya sa bulad, always na lang. So Gia, who is the poor, may feel envious and hostility and may result to violence. So si Gia is more likely to commit crime because she feel jealousness toward his neighbor, who is the rich one. Okay, let's move on to general strain theory. Suggests that criminality is a direct result of negative affective states, the anger, frustration, depression, disappointment, and other adverse emotion that derive from strain. So, gina-explain diri why certain individuals nga maka-feel og mga stress, strain, ay mao pa ang mga more likely to commit crimes. So, there are elements of that. First is strain caused by the failure to achieve positively valued goals. Next, strain caused by disjunction of expectations and achievements. So, ginabaliwala ang mga expectations and achievements. Wala nimo na-meet imong mga expectations and achievements. Removal of positive valued stimuli and presentation of negative stimuli. So, that explained why nganong sila nagaka-feel og strain, adverse strain emotions are more likely to commit crimes. So this is a theory by Robert Agnew. So let's move on to cultural deviance theory. This theory combines the effect of social disorganization and strain theory to explain how people living in deteriorated neighborhoods react to social isolation and economic deprivation. So, kaning cultural deviance theory, it is a combination of social disorganization. Unsa man tong social disorganization? It involves in the crime rate sa neighborhood. sa imuhang mga silingan, ecological characteristics, and strain theory. So, that explains how people living in deteriorated neighborhoods react to social isolation and economic deprivation. So, because of the draining, frustrating, and dispiriting experiences, members of the lower class create independent subculture with its own set of rules and values. So, naa sila gi-create nga ilang set of rules and values nga sila lang ang musunod. Dili sila gasunod sa what is the standard of the society, what are the cultures of that certain society. So, let's move on to the delinquent subculture theory. It argues that delinquent behavior of the lower class youth is actually a protest against the norms and values of the middle class in US culture, where lower class youths experience a form of culture conflict that called status frustration. It is because the social conditions make them incapable of achieving success legitimately. So, in this delinquent subculture theory, gihapon diri ang frustrations, ang mga experiences of lower class youth nga mag-conflict sa social conditions sa society. And this status frustration may tend to form deviant subculture, which are, first, the corner boy. So, unsa man ning corner boy? Kaning corner boy, the role is the most common response to middle class. He is not a chronic delinquent but may be a truant who engages in petty or status offenses such as sex before marriage and recreational drug abuse. More on his response to middle class rejection. So the next one is the college boy. The college boy embraces the cultural and social values of the middle class boy. The delinquent boy. So when we say man go delinquency or delinquent, minor crimes, especially mga committed by young people. So this delinquent boy adopts set of norms and principles in direction of opposition to middle class values. He strives for independence and that nobody can control his behavior. He may join gang and willing to take risks and violate the law. Let's move on to the differential opportunity theory. It is a combination of strain and disorganization principles into a portrayal of a gang, sustaining criminal subculture. So, in this theory, people in all strata of society share the same success goals but those in the lower class have limited means of achieving them. So, kung katulad ako nung naa sa mga lower class, they don't have enough means. So, limited lang ang ilahang mga pamaagi in order to achieve what they want to achieve. So, there are 3 types of gangs. So, first one is criminal. Criminal exists in stable lower class. Criminal, mga criminal gang. Ang ilang ginakomit ani is mga against the law. Nag-involve sa mga bata, youths, or other adolescent. So the next is conflict gang. Who fight with weapons to win respect from rivals and engage in destructive assaults on people and property. So lastly, the retreatist gang. Retreatists are double failures because they are unable to gain success through legitimate means and unwilling to do so through illegal ones. They have tried crime or violence but are either too weak or scared to be accepted in criminal or violent gangs. So this theory was created by Richard Cloward and Lloyd Ollen. So let's move on to drift theory. View the process of becoming a criminal as a learning experience in which the potential delinquents and criminals master techniques that enable them to counterbalance or neutralize conventional values and drift back and forth between legitimate and conventional behavior. So drift are refers to the movement from one extreme of behavior to another, resulting in behavior that is sometimes unconventional, free or deviant, and at other times constrained and subvert. So, kanina ko nung drift theory, view the process of becoming a criminal as a learning experience. Learning experience siya. So, there are types of techniques of neutralization under drift theory. First is denial of responsibility to it. So next is denial of injury. Next is denial of victims. Okay. This was created by David Ismatsa and Gershman Sykes. So let's move on to differential association theory. It suggests that people commit crime by learning in social context through their interactions with others and communication with them, and that through interaction with others, individuals learn the values, attitudes, techniques, and motives, drives, rationalizations, and attitudes for criminal behavior. So, ma-learn nimo ang mga behavior, attitude, techniques, motives, or any kind of that through your social interactions. So this theory consists of 9 principles. So this differential association theory was created by American criminologist Edwin Sutherland. So let's move on to containment theory. It assumes that for every individual, there exists a containing external structure or outer containment, or the structural buffer that holds the person in bounds, and a protective internal structure for both of which provide defense, protection, or insulation against delinquency. So it also attempts to account for social forces that may predispose individual to crime, as well as for individual characteristics that may insulate them for further propel them forward criminality. For example, Miss Jean Miss Jean's friend invite her for drinking spree, but because Miss Jean does not drink alcoholic beverages, but her parents are strict when it comes to curfew hours, then most likely Miss Jean couldn't engage in such deviancy. So, just like what it stated here, that it provide of defense, protection, or insulation against delinquency. So this is containment theory developed by Walter Reckless. So let's move on to social bond theory, also called as social control theory, assumes that all individuals are potential law violators. So kita daw kunong tanan nga mga tao, kita tanan individuals are potential law violators. But they are kept under control because they fear that illegal behavior will damage their relationships with friends, parents, neighbors, teachers, and employers. This theory consists of 4 elements of social bonds. So, ang kanida ko ng social bonds theory, they are kept and they fear that certain behavior may damage the relationships between parents, neighbors, or friends, even teachers and employers. So, makadamage siya sa social bond between individuals. So, it consists of 4 elements: attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief. So, attachment refers to a person's sensitivity, how a certain person attached to other person. Commitment, how a person is committed to other people. Involvement, involvement in conventional activities in schools, recreation, and family leaves little time for illegal behavior. Last is belief. So, like social gatherings, especially sa simbahan, like that. So this was developed by Travis Hirschi. So let's move on to social reaction, labeling theory. So this theory explains that society creates device through a system of social control agencies that designate certain individuals as delinquent, thereby stigmatizing a person and encouraging them to accept this negative personal identity. So, it's more on labeling, social reaction, labeling. So, there are two effects of labeling, the creation of stigma and the effect of self-image. So, the creation of stigma, labels are developed to produce stigma. So, unsa man yung stigma? Social stigma is disapproval or discrimination against an individual or group based on perceivable social characteristics. So, gina-disapprove ang certain group. Okay? So, last one, primary and secondary deviance. Primary deviance basically refers to the initial act of deviant behavior. Primary, from the word itself, unsay sinugdanan, pinakauna nga act of deviant behavior. In other words, this is the first stage of deviant behavior. Mao ni ang pinakauna nga stage nga nung a minor crime happened. At this stage, the deviance goes relatively unnoticed. So, diri sa primary deviance, ang binuhatan sa isa ka tao or sa isa ka individual, dili manotice. Instead, there is a little social reaction or mild corrective actions. For example, there is a college student and who steals a book at the campus bookstore. And then he successfully get it. Gigamit din to niya nga libro in order to get an A grade in his course. And then he eventually graduate and admitted to law school. And later, he became a famous judge. Because his shoplifting is unnoticed, wala gid na notice ang iyang pagpangawat, it is relatively unimportant event because there was no social reaction involved. Walay nakahibalo sa iyang binuhatan. So that's the primary. Then, the secondary deviance refers to the deviant behavior that is a result of being publicly labeled as deviant. So, kay katong primary, wala na notice ang binuhatan. Diri sa secondary, publicized na siya. I-publicized ang binuhatan sa isa ka tao. Secondary deviance is actually a result of other people's negative reactions to the original primary deviance. So, for example, like, nasakpan ng isa ka estudyante nga nangawat. Scott or na bantayan sa guard, he then expelled from college. With his law school dreams dashed, then naklash na tanan iyang mga iyang goals, nangawala na tanan just because na-caught siya from stealing. Nawala na ang iyang pangandoy nga mahimong lawyer. And then maybe, maka-feel din siya lack of character. And then, eventually becomes a drug dealer and ends up in prison because he did not attain his goals in life as a lawyer. And this theory was created by Edwin Ulmer.